me kick things off with a scenario that might sound unbelievable. Imagine this. It's early in the morning. You rush out the door for work, and by the end of the day, you've already put in a grueling 12 hours. Just when you think you can finally relax at home, your boss piles on even more tasks. Now, this isn't a rare occurrence. It's the everyday reality for millions of Chinese workers. So, why is it that Chinese employees never seem to complain about overtime? On one hand, many see this relentless hustle as a sign of admirable hard work and dedication. On the other, critics argue that it's nothing more than corporate exploitation, an environment where employees are pressured into sacrificing their personal time without proper compensation. Which perspective is closer to the truth? Today, we're diving into the intriguing differences between how China and the United States approach overtime. Then we'll delve into the deep-rooted cultural differences hidden behind China and America's overtime work cultures. And by the end of this video, you'll discover how China's constant overtime is affecting every single one of us. Let's talk about China's overtime culture. You might not believe this, but on average, Chinese workers put in over 50 hours a week, with nearly 9.8 hours of work every single day. Imagine working almost 10 hours daily, making China the global leader in working time. A scenario that's almost unimaginable for many of us here in the US. Have you ever come across the terms 996 and 007? You might initially think they're secret codes for some high-tech or spy mission. But no, they're actually viral memes from the Chinese internet. 996 refers to the grueling schedule of working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, while 007 means being on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These aren't just catchy slogans. They capture the reality for countless Chinese employees who rarely see a break. Now, even though Chinese labor laws dictate that overtime should be compensated, many workers end up without proper pay. The rules are there, but proving extra hours worked is a huge challenge, leaving many employees without the benefits they deserve. There have been growing calls to refuse overtime, yet the imbalance between what companies demand and what workers can negotiate remains stark. Let me introduce you to a remarkable invention: the Chinese-style compensatory leave. This is a unique holiday system in China where weekends and public holidays are reshuffled to create the illusion of a longer break. For example, consider the Mid-Autumn Festival, a holiday meant for family reunions. Officially, you only get one day off, but what happens is that the weekend from the week before and the Saturday from the week after are swapped to align with the festival, giving the appearance of a 3-day break. The catch? Those swapped weekend days turn into work days, meaning you're effectively working overtime just to enjoy that extended holiday. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the US work scene. Here, it's all about flexibility and getting results. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, non-exempt employees are legally entitled to overtime pay. So you won't find American bosses expecting you to give up your weekends without a little extra cash in your pocket. Companies like Microsoft and Amazon even promote flexible work arrangements, remote setups, and task-oriented approaches that value what you accomplish over the number of hours you clock in. Even if some Silicon Valley programmers voluntarily work 80-hour weeks, it's driven by passion and choice, not coercion. Imagine if that kind of schedule were imposed on everyone. Talk about a recipe for burnout. So, what exactly is behind this stark contrast between American and Chinese work cultures? Let's dive into that next. Let's dive into the social factors driving China's relentless overtime culture. It's not just about chasing performance. It's also about fierce corporate competition and an unspoken pressure among colleagues to keep up. Think about it. 40 years ago, China was a very poor country. Today, it's the world's second-largest economy, and that transformation owes a lot to the relentless work ethic of its people. Now, imagine a guy like Mr. Zhang. He earns just enough to get by, but after getting married, spending a fortune on his wedding, and taking on loans to buy a house and a car, the pressure mounts. Every month becomes a battle against rising costs and mounting responsibilities. Ever wonder why even newly working Chinese, despite not being flush with cash, choose to get married without a second thought? The reasons are complex, deeply rooted in China's long history and cultural values. Maybe I'll explore that in a dedicated video someday, but today, we're sticking to overtime culture. Compare that to the US, where legal protections and a more balanced work-life culture offer a bit more breathing room. In China, however, this immense pressure becomes part of daily life, a silent force that pushes everyone to work harder, regardless of the personal toll. And here's the kicker. Despite all that pressure, many Chinese workers don't complain about their endless overtime. Instead, they power through, driven by a mix of necessity and an ingrained spirit of resilience. It's not about being stoic for the sake of it. It's a survival strategy in a society where every extra hour worked is seen as a step toward national progress. Pretty intense, right? Now let's dive into the socio-cultural roots behind this phenomenon. Ever heard of Confucianism and the teachings of Confucius? In China, these ideas have shaped society for centuries, emphasizing hierarchy, respect for authority, and maintaining social harmony. This means that in many Chinese workplaces, it's not just about getting the job done, it's also about honoring your superiors and fitting into a system where loyalty and status matter just as much as results. Imagine if that kind of cultural pressure existed here in the US. Maybe our laid-back workdays would turn into a whole different story. It's not about one culture being better than the other. It's about understanding how deeply embedded values can influence our everyday work lives. Are you interested in Confucian culture? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. The most fundamental reason behind China's overtime culture. Sure, social pressures and cultural influences play their parts, but the real driver is the difference in work value. In the US, our high-tech industries and lucrative exports drive up wages across manufacturing, services, and more, meaning every hour worked here is worth about $10. In contrast, 1 hour of work in China might only yield $1. So, if China wants to keep up with global advancements, the only option is to work longer hours. Now consider this. In recent years, Chinese workers have been relentlessly putting in overtime, and their high-end sectors are steadily gaining global strength. If Chinese hard work eventually erases America's advantage, does that mean we'll all have to start working overtime like crazy? That's exactly what I mean when I say that the phenomenon of never-ending overtime in China is impacting every one of us. Alright, now let's look ahead. No need to panic just yet. With rising living costs and increasing work pressures, more young people and even some industries are beginning to question the overtime culture. They're calling for a better work-life balance and stronger labor protections. Here's an interesting twist. The European Union now mandates that companies entering its market must adhere to strict no forced labor standards. This means Chinese companies, if they want to play on the international stage, have to standardize their working hours. Essentially, global pressure is starting to force change in how overtime is handled. So, to wrap things up, today we've taken a deep dive into the overtime cultures of China and the US. We explored why Chinese workers often endure these marathon hours, examining everything from intense social pressures to deep-rooted cultural values. And we've looked at future trends, suggesting that as Chinese high-end industries gain ground, this relentless work ethic might just ripple out and affect us all. Next time, we'll explore the fascinating differences in social norms between China and the US. Trust me, it could completely change your perspective on China. If you're curious to learn more about these cultural differences, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.